Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps lots. And also keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are prior to the trading week of May 2nd, 2022. We're going to take a look at 5 stocks that I think could have some swing trade setups to the long side, which, I mean, in a market that looks like this recently, um, things to the upside are going to be hard to find, or could continue to be hard to find, but these might have some setups that are starting to make sense. So I wanted to sort of point out some reasons why and maybe what to look for if they do start to move. Now, I've actually put these in sort of to me, the best looking setups to the less best looking setups, but I don't think any of these setups look bad, or I just wouldn't have them on the list. But I do think that LRCX is maybe looking, as one of the best on here. Now let's put in some trend lines and some resistance levels. So you see this downtrend resistance, which it like semi broke and is kind of fighting with right now, right? So we see this a lot where things start to wrestle with levels, and that's what it's doing right now. Volume is staying really nice and strong as it's trying to level itself out here in this range. We see this range really established here, right? And then it came in, and this is like the range that it's in at the moment. Pretty big range. 450 to 500 essentially is probably the easy, like, psychological way to think of it. So really what I'm looking for is, does it break below and not be able to hold that 450 level, and does it break above and is able to hold that 500 level? Obviously below 450, I would say, okay, this long setup is nil. It's not going to work. To the upside, breaking over 500 to me gives it a really, really strong potential. And certainly watching what it does in the like dead center of that at 475 makes a lot of sense as well. Sorry, we got trigger happy fingers at the moment. But we're getting, I mean, the whole market's been super volatile, right? And volatile mostly to the downside. So like a lot of this isn't surprising. We do see some pretty strong candles coming in here, and then followed by weaker candles, or candles with more selling pressure. We do see this sort of spinning top here, which, like, if we look at that previously, right, that's led to selling off. So I just would maybe keep an eye on that. It wouldn't be shocking if it's hard for it to break and establish over this 475 level, right? Because that's what unlocks that attempt at 500. And it also wouldn't be surprising if it struggled with that because of the downtrend resistance that it's still wrestling with, right? You haven't had a clean break in establishment over that, so it still is wrestling with that. Now I'll put in a couple of other levels around, like, above 475 and below 475. I'm going to scroll left to get those. So it's been quite a while since we've been in this range, but let's take a look. So you see that 475 level plays pretty strong, historically, and we see a pretty good pivot there. I mean, there was like a stronger consolidation, but this is then below the 450, right? So we want to like hone in on something that makes sense, that's above the 450, since that's our sort of like this long position doesn't make sense level. And the other one probably right around here, but that's the 500 level, which you see, right? So it's making sense that that's showing up. So these are the levels that I'd pay attention to. Sorry if this is seizure inducing. But these are the levels. 486. So 475 to me would really unlock an attempt at 486. And if it can establish over 486, or probably 487, because it's high 486, that to me is really sort of like, okay, we might have a go at 500 and really be able to break out here. To the downside, if we can't hold this 459 level, so probably more like 460, like the psychological 460, I'd watch really closely, for a break to the downside, or you don't want to take the long end and just play the downside, you could do that as well, obviously, depending on how it breaks. But that's the LRCX setup. AVY also looking pretty good to me. Not so much a clear trend line here, but there is a strong attempt at the moment to establish over this level at like 180. I know I'm putting in 179.62 there, but I think probably the more pragmatic level is 180. So you see a stretch, it wicked right off of it here, and then held above it on yesterday's strong, like we talked about, strong sell-off market, and AVY only dipped 1.62%, which in the vast scheme of things is much, much better than the indices fared. So interesting kind of setup there. Now, if we scroll back to when it's been around the 180s before, you see this is, right, this comes in and makes sense as a pretty critical level. And the next level up from here, if you want to be tighter in, it's about 184, 185. Or maybe stretch it up closer to 186 just to give yourself some room, and just know that like sort of there's interesting levels on the dollar mark. And then really, probably something psychological around like 175 as well, but I'd put this down here around 172 level to the downside. But I'm interested to see, if it can break above that 185 and hold, that probably unlocks maybe a clean-ish run to attempt 188, which I know isn't that big of a move, like percentage-wise, but that might give you the run over 190. So that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, if it can't hold this 180 level, that busts the potential for a long position here in my mind. MasterCard, pretty herky-jerky, right? This is like throwing us a lot of gaps, right? There's a gap right down here, which is what I would be mostly concerned about for a long position not working at the moment, is the sort of requirement, if you will, to come down and fill this gap, which, would be pretty testy. What's the low of this candle? Below 356. So that's an easy one. Below 356, I'd be pretty cautious, because then it might just come down and fill this gap down to like 350. And then who knows what filling that gap brings along with it. The downward pressure momentum that brings with it could sort of spill over. Now, if we look and see where, this established a lot of interesting price action around these levels in the past, you see a bunch of support and resistance getting picked up here, right at 364. All of these resistance levels, which are all of these previous support levels. So strong wrestle zone there, if you will. And then I look at this potential for like 373 to be a next level up if it can break to the upside. And then if it can't, it's really, we could put something here, but I do think if it gets into that gap, it's probably just going to fill that gap. So I'm going to put something down below 350 where it might get caught, probably right around 345 would be the best chance for it to catch if it does come down and fills this gap and doesn't bounce at the bottom of the gap and just continues to drag down because of the selling pressure and momentum that it infused into the price action. So there's the levels that I look for on MasterCard. I guess we could put in one more to the upside here. Probably this 380 level makes sense as sort of like the psychological trigger, right? Getting up over, I'd actually put it higher. It might be even like closer to 381 for whatever reason. Yeah, I'd put it right around there. So it might be able to get some legs through that 380. I'll have to see. UPS, obviously getting dragged down quite strongly here, down in the 179s, and also really chaotic action, right? A bunch of gaps, over the last several weeks and months, and, sort of spurring a bunch of crazy action. Now, this gap that you see here wasn't filled until relatively recently, and it's continuing to drag down through there. So if it can get back into the level where it fell through that gap, that would be one that I'd be looking for, right around 185. Otherwise, last time it was around this level, and it's also sort of mid-range of this old gap here. You see support and resistance levels here right around 180. Obviously makes sense, even just from a psychological perspective. And then, yeah, this one looks like it's basically going to be like these large, obvious levels, right? 180, 185, 190, 195. And then to the downside here, 180, 175. I guess we need to put some more in there. Yeah, but right around here, right around 175, 176. I mean, I'd put the level, closer to 176 probably. Hey, these jumpy fingers I have. But, we'll see if it's able to reestablish early next week or early in the coming week 180. That to me would be critical. Otherwise, there's probably a good chance that 175 is not too far in the future. ZIM. So ZIM, yeah, it has this big gap to the upside. So that's obviously sort of like the bullish dream. Oh, come on, stupid thing. Okay, well, wherever this goes, that's about right. This is the potential, to my mind, right, that it comes back up into the 80s and basically gets itself to about 85 to fill this old gap that it hasn't been able to make a run at yet. Now, last time it was in, like firmly in these 50s, we can drag, obviously, there's a bunch of topping out, right around here. Might as well try to catch this support here, right? 62 level is going to be a bit higher, obviously, than where we are now. 55, obviously, resistance. Flipping to support here was the mid-range, the wrestle zone, if you will, at that point. And then right around here, bunch of support and resistance right at 51. So that's mostly what I would look for the near term. Throw one more to the upside there. But yeah, this is what I look for on old ZIM. The closest one in, to my mind, is this 55.30 level, which probably just think of as 55. Can it establish over there? If so, it might have a decent attempt right back at 62 to see if it can flip 62 from resistance to support, which is a pretty good percentage change, right? It's a pretty hefty percentage gain. So that in and of itself might be enough to sort of please your bullish desires. But if it can't hold that 55 level, 51.70 would be the next one I look for it to hold. And if it can't hold that, it might have a pretty rough drop down toward the mid 40s, 46.31. That next strong level down that I see, obviously it can catch prior to that, as you know. But yeah, obviously the big bullish hope here is that when it can unlock some of these levels, right, establishing support over 55 and then flipping 62 from resistance to support, flipping 67 from resistance to support, it's going to catch a really strong resistance at around 74. But then once it can flip 74 from resistance to support, I don't see anything really standing in its way from filling this gap to 85. But that's a long way for it to go, right? That might take a very long time, and who knows if it'll ever get there is the other thing to keep in mind. But volume, holding up relatively well. We haven't seen it die down like it did back here, for instance. So there might be some sort of like, movement that's still to be had in this one. Whether it's upward or downward is to be seen, but that's why we put the levels in and then sort of see how it does at those levels. All right, folks, I hope that your trading week gets off to a good start in the week ahead. I'm anticipating a pretty volatile March, mostly due to the quantitative tightening from the Fed. We'll see how that impacts everything and might, like I said, might make all of these idealized long positions completely null and void because the whole market's going to continue to try to find a bottom, but we'll see. All right, folks, I hope that you had a good weekend, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.